What's up, everyone? Welcome to Level 7. It is time for another episode of the Agents of Fandom podcast. I'm your host, TJ Zwarich, with a different setup than planned, but equally good, if not even better. Nonetheless, we got a great crew ready to talk about some Star Wars and the Acolyte. Joining me as co-host today, as Adam is on a wonderful vacation, well earned. Happy July 4th to our American friends. Damon Gray, host of the Comic Corner Pod. How you doing, Damon?
Doing great. How are you? Happy America Day. Isn't it wonderful?
Oh, it's so great. I don't even celebrate Canada Day, and so July the 4th really means nothing to me, considering our day means nothing to me. But
just
what it does mean,
independence from England.
Yeah, exactly. Good.
Like hundreds of other countries around the world.
We got the other thing that July 4th does mean to me, though, is it makes it more difficult to find a podcast guest. And so shout out to our man, my fellow Canadian, coming in at the last minute, subbing in, many time guest of the pod, Klein Felt. How you doing, Klein?
I'm doing well. Happy birthday to the Caesar salad, guys. 100 years today. We did it. The centennial mark. Happy to celebrate.
How different do you think the Caesar salad was 100 years ago? Like, were people frying up a pig and like sprinkling some bacon in it at that time?
I have no idea. The thing about the Caesar salad is I don't know like what sort of complications they could have added over time. Like, I don't know if any improvement really happened to it. It was kind of like, well, we have some lettuce and we have some of this dressing. What if we just, throw it all together? Maybe at one point they were like, let's put some dried bread on top, but like,
I'm curious what year the croutons were added, because that's really when the Caesar salad became the Caesar salad. Damon, you look like you have something very important to add.
I thought Julius Caesar created the Caesar salad.
No. If I was looking at this earlier today, it was someone else who had the last name Caesar. 100 years ago, it was like, what if we did this? And they did it, and here we are. Now we have it in all sorts of crazy, put it in a wrap, put chicken on it, do whatever. Caesar Cardini, an Italian immigrant who operated restaurants in Mexico and the United States, lived in San Diego.
Should have called it the Cardini.
There you go. Shout out to America, once the land of welcoming immigrants, where everyone, no, maybe not even once, but in an ideal world, welcoming people where anybody can succeed if you pick up your bootstraps and work hard. Didn't really work out that well, but I think that was the plan. But whether you like America or don't like America, whether you like Caesar salad or you don't like Caesar salad, make sure you hit the like button for the Agents Fandom podcast on YouTube. And if you're subscribed, make sure you subscribe wherever you get your podcasts as well. Leave us a nice review. And make sure you're following us on socials at Agents Fandom on TikTok and Twitter, at Agents of Fandom everywhere else. I have a new talking point that I'm going to add to the rundown that I didn't put on there, but it was just something we were discussing pre-show. And that was just about the Star Wars, fandom in general. And we were talking about how, for the most part, for the three of us, this is as hopeful and or invested in Star Wars that we've personally felt in a while. It's clicking the right buttons for us. We're getting some great critical shows like Andor. We're getting some things that are hitting the nostalgia like Ahsoka. And now the Acolyte is bringing something brand new as well. Plus, we got all these new movies on the horizon. I'm feeling really good about it. The one thing I will say is I'm feeling kind of disconnected from other people who like Star Wars, if that makes sense. Like, I feel like we have this little niche group. We've had these wonderful guests on the Agents Fandom podcast for the Acolyte so far. Shout out to Rachel. Shout out to Jamie. Shout out to Arzu. And then last week as well, we had an awesome guest with Georgie. And so shout out to everybody who's been on the podcast so far, because we've had these great guests. But I don't feel like I have that wide of a range of a group to talk Star Wars with. One of the groups I can do that with, I know always, is the Reckless Rebellion podcast. How are you feeling? Similar, like you're invested like I am, Klein. Do you feel that same kind of disconnect though?
I definitely feel the disconnect just amongst the fandom as a whole. I've kind of been like I like to get up on my soapbox on Twitter every once in a while and make the people who deserve to be angry. And, sometimes you got to rustle the right feathers out there. And it's been very interesting to see, especially with the Acolyte happening right now, is it's really, really showing the cracks and the fissures that exist in the Star Wars fandom. And as much as I am more invested than I ever have been, I think that might be partly because what I do every day over at thedirect.com. But I everyone else isn't. I think that a lot of people are like turning their backs on it. And you say hope. I don't know if I'm like necessarily have a lot of hope. I'm very invested in the future of Star Wars. I'm very excited. But right now it is such a blank slate. There's so many I have a weird feeling, and I've talked a lot about this over on Reckless Rebellion. You can go listen to that wherever you're listening to this right now. I have this weird feeling that once we kind of get through the TV shows that we have announced, Star Wars is going to be in a very fascinating place because we have Skeleton Crew supposed to be coming later this year. We have another season of Ahsoka, I guess, coming. We have Andor season 2, which will hopefully be next year. And then we know nothing. We know nothing at all. We know we have movies. And I have a feeling that at that point is going to be kind of a great reset. We're going to hit the reset button on the GameCube and kind of go back to square one with the planning of it all with Star Wars TV. And so I think that we may not see Disney Plus series set in the Star Wars universe for an extended period of time once they're kind of done this, and they can reevaluate what this franchise is by putting a couple movies out in the theaters, maybe dabbling their toes a little later down the line, do another season of Visions, goddammit. Like that's what I want. But
And I'm sure they will. I'm sure that will be one of
I
the
think
things
that's
in
it.
the near
I
future
don't want
we
to say
get.
low investment, but a low risk. Like it's just
Yeah.
I think they can just put that up and the Twitter warriors won't be like, oh my God, that ruined my Star Wars. But I have a weird feeling with where they're at in the TV kind of side of things. Maybe we get a second season of The Acolyte. I don't know. But it's exciting, but it's also scary that we don't know anything.
It's weird that, the social media bubble makes it seem like the general consensus is negative. And then you look at viewership numbers on the Acolyte. I
They're
believe
going
it was
crazy.
Screen Rant posted the article, and it was the second most watched Star Wars show behind Obi-Wan. I agree with you, though. There'll probably be a little bit of a break from Star Wars television in that time, because you look at what Disney Plus has coming up on the Marvel side of things with the Wondermans and the Ironhearts and the Eyes of Wakanda, What If season 3. There'll be Percy Jackson season 2 coming. It kind of makes sense that Star Wars could get a break as all of those things are coming out in the future here. Damon, how do you feel about that? Almost the state of Star Wars right now.
I mean, when it just comes to like the TV shows, I think just streaming as a whole is gonna be kind of getting like a second look, a third look. It's gonna be reevaluated like drastically over the next couple of years. So that will definitely be part of like what Star Wars television will kind of be looked at. I mean, my relationship with Star Wars is kind of like weird because I've been the most invested I've been in Star Wars may just be like the High Republic stuff. And that as a fandom is so beyond separate than like the main Star Wars fandom that like everyone kind of associates with Star Wars. Because the High Republic fandom is similar, is the most similar thing we can see to it is like the Yord Horde-ness of it all. Like the people who like really become really obsessed with the character and just kind of have like fun with it. That's like the side of the fandom that I enjoy the most, that I kind of like interact with the most. But that is, it's a bubble, right? So we all kind of, regardless, no matter which fandom you're in, whether you're just like the main movies, the TV shows, whatever, we're all kind of like within the bubbles. And sometimes the bubbles kind of hit each other. And yeah, some of them are significantly worse than others. Like my relationship with it all is just kind of like I just kind of like push it off to the side or I laugh at it. And if I enjoy something, great. If I don't enjoy something, you know what I do when I don't enjoy something? I just don't talk about it. I just kind of move on. So if there is something I don't enjoy or I haven't gotten into, like I just really couldn't get into the Bad Batch after the second season. And yes, I've heard the third season is the best season, but I just
very good.
like I know, but I just like haven't just pushed myself to watch it, and then I just kind of like move on from it, right? Like I dabble into things, into the areas that I enjoy.
Damon, can I ask you a quick question? And TJ, you're you can chime in on this as well. You talk about these bubbles and kind of bouncing off each other, and this kind of like, and that's a great way of describing the Star Wars fandom right now. Is it is very like it's not united at all. Calling it a Star Wars fandom almost feels like disingenuous because it is so many separate factions. It seems at this point. Of what we know of the things announced, is there, and what is it, a project that could unite those bubbles? Maybe not forever, but in that moment.
Mandalorian Grogu movie.
I was going to say First Jedi movie, because even the Mandalorian Grogu stuff, you're dealing with the Disney Plus baggage, and some people have just like completely sworn off. Mando season 3 wasn't it for them, and they're like, you know what, I'm done with streaming Star Wars and anything to do with it. My pick was going to be First Jedi, but I can see what you like. I think a movie in general is going to do wonders for this franchise.
First Jedi seems more likely. I think the Mando and Grogu movie will and can do it if it's good.
I think anything that explores something new would get the people who are like, I'm done.
But like, isn't the Acolyte doing that? It's exploring something new.
It absolutely is. But there's people who just ran off with. So if you want to like bring those people back again and be like, all right, let's try this again, then like you said, the First Jedi has to be something new, something fresh. And if then they still don't like it, then it's like, I don't know what to do.
At that point, like, I feel like the Acolyte almost is uniting the majority of it. It's just, it's still difficult because people are trying to sift through all the assholes within the fandom that won't like anything unless it's a big, strong, powerful white male lead. And so do you really have to worry about those fans anyways?
I think the last thing on this I'll say, and this applies to everything, whether it's Star Wars, whether it's Marvel, whatever, there is a very large difference between like the these diehard fans that are very loud on social media that will go to these websites and write things very badly,
that are or that are listening to the podcast. Like, if you're listening to this podcast, you are a percentile of a percentile of people who are into this sort of stuff, right? Like, you have sought out external content beyond just the thing itself.
Yeah, there's a difference between that, right? And then, like, I have to say, like, everyone else, but, like, the general public who will just kind of, like, go to a Star Wars movie. Hey, because there's a Star Wars movie coming out. Let's go see it. And you may like it or you may not, but that's part of, like, that general audience-ness of it all. And that is the majority of it all. So what will unite everyone, if we want to include the general audiences too, then, yeah, it has to be a movie, because a movie is what gets everyone involved. Like, everyone who goes into these big franchises,
especially one like the First Jedi type of thing where anyone can come in and this can be your first Star Wars movie. Sure. You don't have to have seen anything, most likely, and it can be your very first Star Wars movie and you can dive in fully. And so I think that is a pretty good call as to something that could really bring a large portion of the group together. But it's like Damon said, we want to watch things we like and we want to talk about things we like. So on that note, Whatcha Watching? Guys, it's the newest segment on the Agents of Fandom podcast. If it's a state of time where you're so busy that you're only watching things for work, that's fine. But other than that as well, if you have anything, what are you just watching or reading or listening to for fun right now, Klein?
I mean, I just finished The Bear in this house. I'm sure you guys have done so much like coverage of that over on Agents of Fandom. Finished the season last night, me and my spouse, and I said it after I saw season 2, and then I rewatched season 2 a few months ago. It's my favorite TV show of all time. Like, it has surpassed Breaking Bad and Saturday Night Live and Seinfeld for me, as like, it's so interesting. And even this season for me, that I don't know if it hits the heights of season 1 and 2. I still think it's really damn good. And I just cannot believe that we're getting such creatively interesting like TV on our TVs, for lack of a better term. It is so fascinating to me. Like, you sit down and slight spoilers for episode 1 of season 3. If you haven't watched it, like, skip like 35 seconds ahead. Episode 1 of season 3, I don't know how that gets greenlit. Like, I don't know how that idea of like it is so unique and so unlike anything I've ever seen on TV before. Gets greenlit. I don't know how it gets written. I would love to see a script for that. And it's just, I think it's so cool, and I want more of it. We're gonna get more of it. We're not gonna get too much more of it, which is very sad, but like, I'm looking at getting a bear tattoo. Like, I am so in. Let it rip. Yes, chef. I loved it. I loved it so much.
Season 3 didn't quite hit as hard for me as the previous two. I'm just a very heavy plot guy. Like, I need a story to be moving forward for me to be fully invested, and that's what I thought season 3 was lacking. But the individual episodes, the character performances,
let me just say,
the cinematography, just top tier. Yeah, great, just absolutely
so
great.
Good.
Doors, amazing. I'm forgetting the title off the top of my head, but Ayo Edebiri's directorial debut with the one that focused napkins, exactly. Like, great, absolutely wonderful individual episodes. It just didn't have the same overarching story that hooked me like season 2 did. But I agree with you. Some great television. I'm trying to catch up on The Boys. I haven't watched this week's episode yet, but I'm caught up other than that, and I'm loving it. My Adventures with Superman is one of the best shows on TV right now. If you're not watching it, check it out. But I have been doing just so much stuff for work that I haven't had a ton of enjoyment watching. I watched Drive Away Dolls last night, which was fun, and oh my god, not at all what I thought it was going to be. I didn't check the plot. I see Pedro Pascal in the cast. I did not expect him to only be in the movie for about 26 seconds. But it was still a very enjoyable movie. I saw Argyle for the first time, which started super fun, then lost me about 2/3 of the way through, but I think I'm still higher on it than most people. And then our kind of downtime, what we have in the background thing to watch right now is the Clone Wars. We're on season 4. We've been watching it back through. So that's been what I'm watching. Damon, how about you?
Very similar when it comes to My Adventures with Superman. I've been enjoying that this season's been trekking through. I've been on a weird summerween horror kick. I don't know why.
Let's go.
Am. I just finished a Scream marathon. That was a lot of fun. Enjoyed that. Been reading a lot of horror comics. Shout out Silver Coin. Freaking love that series. Great little anthology series about exactly what it sounds like. It's a cursed coin. Every issue is different. Someone picks it up, a coin, and something terrible happens to them every single time, but it's through different versions of time and space. So it's like you can kind of do and tell whatever story you want to tell within that. And just coming out this month, we have so many great horror comics too. So it's just been a really fun time for that.
Couldn't agree. I was going to say couldn't agree more, but it's because I was focusing on something else. I'm not watching the horror stuff right now. I'm not agreeing with anything, but I'm happy that you're enjoying it. The one thing I actually wanted to bring back up is, since Klein talked about the bear, our resident old man with the Agents of Fandom, Carlos Freites, great guy, biggest fan of the bear. Right. And I felt bad we couldn't get him screeners because they didn't send any screeners. And so I ended up writing the review, but he voice messaged me last night a wonderful point about the writing with season 3. And one of the things that makes this show so incredible, and that is back in season 2, arguably, I think the top episode of the show as a whole, depends who you ask. A lot of people will say Fishes from season 2. A lot of people will say Forks from season 2. And Forks is an episode where Richie, cousin, Ebon Moss-Bachrach, who of course is going to be the Thing in Fantastic Four. Forks focuses on him improving himself, him finding the joy in self-actualization and striving for excellence and breaking past his old habits, his toxic habits in the workplace, and becoming not just a better worker, but a better person. It makes him want to be a better dad. It makes him want to be a better partner, etc., etc., etc. And then we see in Doors, episode 3 of The Bear, when things start hitting the fan and it's not going to plan and everyone starts reverting back to their old habits a little bit. And for Richie, one of the things you see as he's busy, he's stressed, it's chaotic, is you see a knife fall on the floor. A fork fall on the floor, and he sees the fork on the floor and he moves on and he leaves it. Kind of symbolic of that episode Forks, where he learns all these new things, he builds all these positive new habits, and when all of a sudden things start going bad, you ignore them, you revert back to your old negative habits. And so I thought that was a really cool aspect of the writing in the show that Carlos pointed out to me when he was gardening last night. He had the thought, he was gardening, and so he dropped it in the voice note and sent it to me. And so I said to him, Damon, can you think you can get that in 59 seconds or less so that we can throw that up on YouTube Shorts? And if not, hopefully I explained it well enough that we can clip it from this episode of the podcast as well. But the people aren't here to listen to us talk about the bear. They're here to listen to us talk about the Acolyte. And Klein, I haven't gotten your thoughts on this show at all so far. Damon, I haven't gotten on your thoughts since the 3rd episode. So I'm looking forward to hearing what you, the two of you, think, not just on episode 6, Teach/Corrupt, but the series in general, the first 6 episodes. Klein, how are you enjoying the Acolyte?
I think that the Acolyte is really great. I don't think it is quite anything beyond that. I wouldn't call it amazing. I wouldn't call it a masterclass by any means, but I think it is a awesome mystery that maybe some of the production values bug me a little bit. I think some of the costumes do look a little like Spirit of Halloween-y, just a tad. And some of the action, especially stuff from the trailers, really has bugged me a bit. But that central mystery that we've been going throughout the first 6 episodes, I think is so good. And these characters, I'm in on Soul, I'm in on Qimir, I'm in on the twins. It is just so fascinating and fun to watch these characters work through this like puzzle box. And I really like a mystery. I love a mystery that you don't see coming. So like coming into this series, I was like, it's going to be about who's under the mask. It's going to be this murder mystery, who's killing the Jedi, whatever. And we've switched that about 2 or 3 times throughout the series so far. And I love that, because now it's more about no. What happened to these girls? What happened on Brendock? Who's at fault here? And so I've been really liking it. Some people may not enjoy this opinion, but I truly believe they need to give Leslie Headland more Star Wars. I think that say what you will about some of the writing in the show, the production value, whatever. I think as an idea, this show is great. Let her pitch more. Let her sit in the creative room and go, I have an idea for a movie over here. I have an idea for this, because she gets it. She really understands like how this universe works and how to tell a compelling story in it. So I've been loving it so far. It's really good.
I couldn't agree more. Leslie Headland she fucking gets it. She gets it. She knows her lore. She knows, and the storytelling is wonderful. And it feels Star Wars while feeling entirely brand new at the same time. Damon, what have you thought of the first 6 episodes of The Acolyte?
I think so far the show is good. And I would kind of like put it at that. It is good. I find myself more interested in a B and a C plot within the show than the A plot that it's giving me. Like, I find myself more interested in Soul as a character and Qimir as a character. And then the stuff between Osha and May, I've started to lose interest in that backstory and what's going on with them, and more just like, what the hell did Soul do? Type of thing. Like, that's like what's driving me. And we're like, what? I think the last time we chatted, I was very adamant. Like, I did not want Qimir to be the stranger, the guy under the mask. I did not want that. I didn't want it. And then we got it. And then I'm sitting back in that episode, watching everything unfold. I'm like, man, this works for me. And I don't know why. This is just working for me.
It's because of him.
It's because he's not that character that we saw in the first few episodes. It is a total, drastically different character. Much stronger character than I thought. I thought it was just going to be like this Weasley little like, ooh, hee hee, I got you. Absolutely not the case. And I'm like, all right, I'm fascinated in you now and what drove you to this place. What do you actually believe in? Now I'm interested in you. So that's where I'm at with the show. I think we'll talk about this episode particularly. I think this was the most interesting episode of the series, personally.
I'm loving it so far. I would go as high to say as I think it's great. It's not awesome. It's not wonderful. It's not perfect, but I think the series has been great so far. The highs have just been absolutely incredible to me. There have been a few things. I'm with you. I'm not fully invested in Osha and May's story. I think Amanda Stenberg is incredible. And I think the characters are well written. I'm just not super invested in what happens to them. But like, and whereas like somebody like Jackie, I was like, I wanted to know more about Jackie. I wanted to see more of Jackie. I said out loud, you know, Jackie's becoming one of my favorite characters in Star Wars. Bam, stab to the chest, neck, like just like seconds after. But Qimir is the thing that's holding me to this series right now. That's like, I'm so invested in what the hell this dude's story is, what's going to happen between him and Osha. And it's like you said, he's not this sniveling little weasel guy. My man is sexy. You know, like the sex appeal and horniness in this episode, I think rivals anything we have seen in Star Wars. You know, we get Anakin waking up in it from a nightmare, shirtless, looking all sweaty in Revenge of the Sith, looking great. We got some big time flirting moments between Anakin and Padme. We get some big flirty moments in the Clone Wars. Sometimes we get Han and Leia and their flirty moments. But I think this scene, Klein, do you agree? This scene where he's coming out of the water, she's watching him. He asks her to join him. He says, do you like how it feels? Do you want to touch my lightsaber? Is this not the horniest moment in Star Wars history?
It might be. I mean, I can't speak for myself, but he may have not been the only person that was wet in watching this episode. It's sexy. Star Wars has been leaning towards a little bit of that recently. I think we had a long conversation on Reckless Rebellion during Andor that we see butt for the first time in Andor season 1, and it was like a huge deal. We were like, oh my gosh, like that's like never happened before. May never happen again. And then we get this episode. He disrobes the top and then goes down, and I was like, I was convinced we were going to see at least butt. We didn't, but they had me. It's hot. I think that this series as a whole actually might be the horniest Star Wars series we've ever had.
I couldn't agree more, and I think it works. Like, I absolutely love it. I think it's something that Star Wars has been missing a little bit. Like, when we get moments in the Clone Wars where there's clear references to, like, Obi-Wan and Satine having banged, you know? Or, like, Kanan and Hera give each other some kind of, like, in Rebels. I love it every time. I'm like, they're doing it. They're talking about sex because it just seems so out of place and silly in Star Wars. But when it happens, it's like that works. That works, Damon. What did you think?
Look, I think it works a lot more than like Rey.
What do you mean?
Trying not to.
There was no sex appeal in that relationship at all. You know, it was a kiss of gratitude. There was no libidinal nature to any of it.
We almost had like the similar thing where he takes off the shirt and she sees him shirtless too. But there's just something where it's like, this feels weird. Where in this case, like, right?
You know,
this is like, this is like okay.
No disrespect whatsoever to the Kylo and Rey shippers. That's not what I'm doing here. But the way I view them is very much like two teenagers, two kids who, they're very important to each other, but they don't know what that means. They don't know what they're doing. Osha's looking at Qimir and she's like, Hubba, daddy. Like, it's a different level with like just the vibe is totally different to me.
Yeah, it's just written a little different. It's a little less silly, I think. It's just more to the point. It's intentionally trying to be a little steamier, Yord's not the only guy. I mean, we had Yord steaming. We had Yord steaming his whole thing. Like, this show has been intentional when it comes to that, right? But that's the beauty of the High Republic. Things get a little crazy. Anyone can die at any given moment, and anyone can be off with whoever you'd want them to be. The shipping in the High Republic fandom also like crazy. So this just kind of like encapsulates all of that. It's fun. It's a fun aspect to this that we don't usually get in Star Wars.
You know what movie should have had not just one butt, but multiple butts?
Eternals?
Solo.
Oh.
I mean, Eternals as well. But Solo. Solo should have leaned into the sexiness a little bit. I'm of the mind that is maybe Star Wars' most underrated movie because people either just don't like it or they don't talk about it. And I think it's really fun. But I think that would have been a way to make it even more fun was throw some butts in that movie. It would have fit. one of the interesting parts of this episode, though, and even the first time that we saw this planet that Chimir's on calling home, was people were saying, this looks a lot like where Luke was in at the end of The Force Awakens and throughout The Last Jedi. And while it does have those vibes, cliffs, green grass, and water, I think a couple other people brought this up, but the first one I saw was from a friend of the show, former podcast, Jordan Mason, who brought this up on Twitter, and how this looks like the planet Baldemnik, an ocean planet adorned with rocky tropical islands in the Bakrofsen system of the Oral sector. Located within the Outer Rim territories, the hostility of its native Conme species, together with its extremely harsh climate, discouraged most people from ever visiting the planet. Despite the beauty of its giant rock cliffs, pristine beaches, and vast azure oceans, it was mostly of interest to cartographers, xenobiologists, and fisherfolk until the knowledge of the planet's rich deposits of cortosis ore fell into the hands of Sith Lords Darth Tenebris and Darth Plagueis, again potentially connecting Qimir and this world to the Sith and some other Sith Lords. But the biggest thing, we see the cortosis deposits and the cortosis ore in this episode in his little lair. It makes sense that this would be a planet with cortosis. I think Baldemnik is probably the planet that they are on. Klein, what did you think about Chimir's completely different approach with Osha? That's one of the things that I found so incredible. Is he talks about it too. He says, like, I thought May wanted more, but all it was is revenge. He's right. When you look back at Osha at the beginning of the series, the flashbacks, even as a kid, even though she's a great young, happy, hopeful kid, there are a lot of dark side vibes there of like selfishness, wanting to separate, jealousy, fear, obviously being the biggest one. But also just wanting to be on your own path, wanting to do things your way, which shouldn't be a problem. But because the Jedi are very so my way or the highway, it kind of leads to being a problem. What do you think of Chimir's approach to recruiting Osha, so incredibly different from how he recruited May?
Well, I think he's doing that. He's saying what he needs to say depending on the person in front of him. And I think that that's a really smart thing to do. He's playing into Osha's he's playing into the reason that she quote unquote left the Jedi. Who knows if we actually left? We get little instances in this episode specifically where it makes it sound like maybe she didn't leave. Maybe she was kind of like, it was a mutual parting of ways, that something may have happened. And he's kind of playing into that, like, hey, did you like being the Jedi and tapping into the Force and doing all of this stuff, but you didn't like walling off the emotions? You didn't like getting to feel the things that you want to feel? Well, here's an opportunity for you. And something I think he's done very smartly is anytime she calls him evil, anytime she calls him the Sith, anytime the Sith is mentioned around him or him in any antagonist form, it's never like, oh yeah, that's me. It's like, well, that's one way to see it, sort of thing. It's like, to quote Anakin, from my point of view, the Jedi are evil. But like, he is very much like, yeah, that's what the Sith call, or that's what the Jedi call me. Or in this one, he's like, she uses the word Sith, and he's like, that's kind of a term that was given to me, sort of thing. And so he's kind of appealing to her and going like, we aren't necessarily evil. Evil is a point of view. And it's obviously working.
I think something very interesting about Osha in particular, and that's been highlighted throughout the series, is it almost seems like it's her inability to connect with the Force, right? And what in the High Republic is like, especially back in Phase 2, which is in the past, but they talk about different users of the Force and how they connect to the Force differently. And he's trying to show her that there's another way to connect to the Force that maybe didn't work for her with the Jedi way. And this may be able to like have her connect with the Force, something she wasn't able to do before. So it's not her just falling to the dark side, because like he said, that's semantics. This is her being able to connect with something she wasn't able to connect with before.
you love deeper than those around you can love. That is something I can give you that the Jedi can't. And that is actually one of the, I think, biggest flaws of the Jedi is the belief that connection always leads to the dark side and you can't have these attachments. I think that's the biggest flaw in their set of ideals, because if you're talking about the power of light and the power of hope, yes, fear can corrupt things, but there's also nothing stronger in terms of light than the good old power of love, you know? And so I do think that is an aspect where forcing people to abandon those attachments leads to the dark side more often than not. Hint, hint, Anakin Skywalker, as opposing to him just teaching him to have healthy attachments. But that's an area I do think that the Jedi screw up, and it's the first time I've really seen that manipulated, which I really like. Desire is an aspect of the dark side that they really do, and temptation, you know, that they don't really tap into. They talk about being tempted by the dark side, but it's usually power, not lust. You know, it's so interesting to see them go this route of give into your wants, you know, give into your desires, give into your wants. You want to fit in, you want to be loved, you want to be the person you've always felt like you should be, but no one has ever allowed you to be. Now I can give you that, which again, you know, be who you want to be, embrace the things that you feel good about. That should all be in the light if taught properly. But when it's being told you have to hide this, you have to feel shame about this, you got to get rid of that from your personality. That's how it becomes an aspect that can be embraced in the dark. And so I do find that aspect of the story incredibly interesting. One of the last parts about that first set of scenes that I really want to touch on is not Qimir's muscles on his back that we've talked about, but the scars on his back, because it's very interesting from a symbolism standpoint that the same episode they show Qimir's back and his body and all these scars that look a lot like a whip are also the exact same episode that they introduce Vernestra's lightsaber whip. We see it for the first time as well. She's acting weird. She senses something familiar. And Qimir also said to Osha, I used to be a Jedi a long, long time ago. Hinting that this dude is old as fuck. This dude is not as old as he looks. He has been around. And Vernestra's probably what? High Republic Damon, help me out. Already over 100 years old?
Yeah.
And so what are the chances that either these two trained together and they got in a fight and that's where these scars on his back came from? Or what if Vernestra was once his Jedi master and he was a Padawan? I've seen a lot of people theorize on Twitter as well. What if Vernestra is the Sith Lord? But basically with all the things that the lore that has been introduced with the High Republic, with her character already being in it, we know she's not. But I do think potentially the idea of her being either something having worked with, trained with, or potentially either been she had an intern who wasn't a Padawan this episode, a Padawan, an intern, or whatever, what have you. Do you think Vernestra and Qimir have interacted in the past, Klein? And do you think she could potentially have been his former master?
I think that the potential is there, especially if you talk about like the whip theories of it all. I just personally hope she isn't. I think that the introduction of him saying he's a Jedi or was a Jedi a long time ago is very interesting. And they're going to have to do some narrative finagling to make me buy how any one of these characters could have dodged him. Or maybe they didn't. We have no idea what the twist in this show is going to be. What happened on Brendok? What does Soul know? Maybe he was there. Who knows? But I just haven't been... I'm not big on I haven't read any of the High Republic books, famously illiterate. And so I don't want to badmouth Vernestra. I'm just not a big fan. And I just hope she isn't given that much like significance in this show, because I haven't really liked what I've gotten from her so far.
Everything I've gotten so far has been very blah, stone-faced, and I don't really have much interest. But Damon, as somebody who has read the High Republic
Which
books,
is funny
because isn't she awesome? Like, don't people love her?
She's spunky. You know, this is something that she's essentially, they're portraying her as a character who's become hardened throughout time, which is more or less the reason why people could be speculating that there's something weird going on with her, right? Because this is not the Vernestra that we've like seen in the books and the comics and everything, right? Like this is very like, this is who she became type of thing. It's a little off-putting. So
It was the portions of Ahsoka, that the Ahsoka show, that I didn't like. That it's like she got there, and it was because of trauma and grief she wasn't there. But this isn't the Ahsoka I know from the TV shows, and that's I get that vibe, even though I too haven't read the High Republic books from Vernestra a little bit.
yeah, that's kind of like what's going on with her. So like when it comes to her being like, she's a Sith Lord, I think we would like tone that idea down like tenfold. I don't think she's that, but I think she could potentially start to question maybe the Jedi Order a little bit. Possibly, we do know that things probably by the end of this may have to be like dusted under a table at some point. So is she involved in that? Who knows? I think that's an interesting thing. To me, when it comes to like the whole what is this weird little backstory, I think I brought that idea up to you where I was like, oh, maybe at one point now this whole, but you, I'm kind of contradicting myself because he did say, Qimir did say, he's like, I'm a lot older than I look, which means there's definitely no way that she would be his master unless it was like within the last 10 years type of thing, because that's not where she is.
Otherwise, yeah.
Yeah, so it's like that doesn't really make a lot of sense.
They could have been Padawans at the same time.
Something like that, right? Like, I think there's a lot of intrigue, and this is where I said earlier why this episode to me is the most interesting. It's because of these moments. It's because we're starting to dig deeper into Qimir. Like, what is going on with that scar that we just found out about? Like, what is the history here of that? How does he know Soul, and why does Soul not recognize him? What's the history there? Like, we don't know. Did Soul clearly had some sort of past? Was he something before being a Jedi? We don't know. I think it's those levels that is making me more interested into it.
And I don't think he's necessarily something before a Jedi, just because he did say earlier in the show he was recruited even younger than May and Osha were when they were recruited. And so he likely would have been a still little kid. But another deep cut they do pull here with Vernestra, and correct me if I'm wrong on any of this, Damon, but she brings up, her intern brings up how, don't you get sick when you fly through hyperspace? And she says, no, I don't get sick. I just get uneasy, which is a reference to early on in her life. She had some uncontrollable visions when flying through hyperspace. And that was something she worked on. They became more controllable. But another interesting thing with, maybe that's something that is coming back and is getting worse again as Qimir comes back into the fold. Something I think we could keep an eye on.
I don't think it's something. I think that's just more of a callback for
a fun little reference.
A fun little reference for those who read the books to be like, hey, we see you.
One part you brought up Soul already, Damon, and he's chatting with May throughout this episode. He doesn't realize, I think it's May at first, or he does, and he's just playing along. To me, when it maybe Basil clued him in, maybe Pip clued him in, maybe it was just the way that May was pressing him for questions that he realized that this is not Osha. And I think it's understandable. He doesn't at the beginning because, he's clouded by grief, by emotion, by loss. He's not trying to sense specifically who someone else is in the Force. But when he knows it's May, and he straps her right down to a bed thing and makes sure she's restrained, the mindset changes. He goes darker. And Damon, you said, like, I think everybody needs to calm their theories that Vernestra might be a Sith Lord. But
I don't think Soul is a Sith Lord, but dude has a dark past. He
did something. I don't know what, but he did something.
He did something, dude. And he has a history, because I think, honest to God, I think there's something between him and Qimir. Like, there's gotta be. Like, I don't know if, like, they came from the same family at some point or whatever, like the same town, planet, whatever, and there's like something there, but like dude has something in him because he flipped a switch. And I'm like watching him go, just how he's saying these words and staring at me, and I'm just like, nah, there's something off here. There's something off. This isn't like this lovable guy that we saw throughout the first few episodes.
And the amazing emotional facial acting that Lee Jung Jae was doing when he was grieving and then swapping it to that was just another incredible performance from him. Klein, do you think that little twinge in darkness, was that in reference to whatever the hell he did on Brendok? Was that in reference to Qimir? Is he Chimir's former Sith Lord that stabbed him in the back? What do you think is the case here?
Well, I think it has something to do with Brendok. We get the weird kind of double cliffhanger in this episode, this being one of them, where I've waited 16 years for this, cut, and we don't know what he's going to say. I have a crackpot theory I would like to debut on both of you two here. I'll see what you guys think. I think that Soul and those Jedi, what we saw in episode 3, that whole sequence of them showing up, being afraid of the witches, saying, you guys can't use the Force. We fear you because we're different. Because you're different. How pressing and real. Were all memories implanted by the Jedi into Osha. I think that's what he's hiding. I think the Jedi are responsible for the death of her whole family and May, or quote unquote May, and everyone. And they thought they could take this girl, manipulate her, implant these memories into her, and basically turn her into a Jedi Knight out of it, because she was unnaturally born of the Force and maybe has some special like connection to the Force because of that. But like, I think that Soul specifically helped kill Mama Nestra and this whole family, and are trying to keep that under wraps, and going as far as to like brainwash Osha.
There are so many aspects of this mystery that they could unfold in different ways, and I don't really know how it's going to go. There's been so many references to mind wiping and mind reading and memory changes throughout this season already. With Osha, they again, that's kind of a point I forgot, is the way they were born. And throughout interviews, Leslie Headland and Jackie and Daphne Keane, who plays Jackie, have both referred to Osha as a young prodigy. So even though she's not clearly in tune with her skills with the Force, the skills are there. She just doesn't really know how to utilize them yet. All these different aspects of them, that it's like, how powerful could they really be? You know, how does the witch magic potentially play into their powers? And then you throw on top of it, what did Soul do? What did the Jedi do? They've been very poignant throughout this series when someone dies to show the body. Yord on the ground, Jackie on the ground. Oh, Qimir got carried away. That's because he's not actually dead. Mother Anastasia. Oh no, Mama, there she is. She's dead. But Mother Coral, Darth Maul looking lady, the one with the horns, very evidently was not with any of the bodies at the end of episode 3, when we're seeing Osha's memories. Does that have anything to come into play? Could she show up back here at some point? The part that I find the most interesting about in addition to all of these, in terms of what's coming, is we know we're getting some kind of flashback stuff still, because there's scenes from the trailer where Kelnaka is fighting Torben. Now, what does that mean? Was it only some of the Jedi that wanted to go through with something and not the other half? Is that play into Torben's guilt? Did Torben try and stop them, and he couldn't, and that's why he's meditating? Or did Kelnaka try and stop them, and that's why he was isolated without the rest of the Jedi Order, because he said, "Fuck these guys! I'm not trying to do this stuff."
I think there may be a little something. So if we remember back in that flashback episode, they were able to essentially control Corbin for a hot second. Torben, sorry. They're able to control him for a hot second. So maybe that there's a factor in there too, where maybe they tried to use him almost as a weapon, and Kalnak is trying to defend himself. And we're almost taking that out of context by only seeing like the two of them fight and not knowing what came beforehand.
I think that makes a lot of sense as well. It's probably the most likely outcome, I think, if I'm being honest there. But so many different aspects of this mystery could unfold. I think next episode is probably going to be the next flashback one we get where all of this is explained. I thought it would be 6, but turns out it's going to be 7. The final tease that you talked about, Klein, the other cliffhanger is Osha trying on the mask that we find out is a sensory deprivation mask, which again doesn't make a ton of sense because like how is he conversing with all these different people throughout the series if he can't hear them? But I do think it makes the fighting stuff really cool because it's kind of like, you know, the masks that Padawans put on to try and fight the lasers. But when Osha puts it on, not only does it give Darkseid teases, but she has the Darth Vader breathing. It's not entirely like Darth. It's very unique to her mask, but it's a very clear I'm a bad guy now tease, or at least that's how I took it. How did you take it, Klein?
I took it that maybe she is not a bad guy yet, but she's like she's open to the idea of potentially being a bad guy. I think next week you talk about flashbacks and stuff like that. The way that they're probably going to frame it is, if my theory is correct and she had memories implanted and all that, her putting on the mask, she's going to get like a force vision. She's going to sit in there, and that's how they'll like kind of, I think, bookend the flashback. It'll be like she'll have the dark side energy rush over her, force vision. Here's actually what happened. We'll see it from a different point of view. I think that's really cool. I love the way that she caresses the mask before she puts it on. Like she's just like tracing every little seam and everything on it. I think that's really like, you can really tell that she maybe hasn't fully bought in yet, but as I said before, is open to the idea of buying in way more so than she was even at the beginning of this episode. And I'm excited to see what it means for like her and Qimir, and what is Chimir's kind of ultimate end goal with all of this. And we'll see. We only have 2 weeks left.
I'm going to throw a few different things out there, and the two of you feel free to take it, run with it, whatever you like. Will Osha and May both survive this season? Will May become a Jedi? Will Osha become a Sith? Is Qimir a former Sith apprentice, or is he a Sith Lord? If he was an apprentice, who is the Sith Lord? Is Mother Coral alive, playing some kind of role in this story? Is Sol a dark Sith Lord? Did Vernestra train Qimir as a Jedi once upon a time? Is Qimir the original Knight of Ren himself, who Kylo gets his namesake from?
That's awesome.
It's theory time. Damon, I'll throw it to you first. Any theories you want to get off your chest before we get out of here?
Look, I mean, we haven't talked about it, but it was like my fun little detail I sent you immediately when the credits were just kind of playing in the background. But Kylo Ren's theme plays a little bit again and the credits, and you're just kind of like sitting there like, what does that mean? And the creative team on the show said it's there for a reason. So is it for a Knights of Ren perspective, or is it just kind of like we see someone who's conflicted and that dark side is calling to them, right? One last thing I gotta say, I freaking love that mask. That may be one of my favorite like Star Wars masks, honestly. It's up there. It's a top 2 or top 3, and it does absolutely confirm any theory that people have put out there, where it's like, if you give something a full set of teeth, it is 10 times freakier than anything else. Like the way that they have like the coils in there to represent it, brilliant. My big theory for this, maybe, I don't see either twin dying by the end. I just don't think that would make sense. I could see May considering Jedi, but then at the same time be like, nah, that's stupid, and go off. But I could absolutely see Osha start to fall to accept that darker side, because that's what finally lets her tap into the Force.
Osha is Darth Plagueis.
Well, that
I've said that on a podcast in the last couple of weeks.
I think I also messaged TJ that idea, and I'm like, if you really want to see that fandom just absolutely
You want to light Twitter on fire?
I think that'd be hilarious, by the way, but that's just because I like seeing chaos. Maybe that makes me dark side, maybe it doesn't. I don't know. But I think that's a fun idea. I kind of want to see Osha accept that dark side just because that is the thing that finally lets her tap into the Force. I think that's where this is going by the end.
One other thing I want to throw out there before I throw it to you here, Klein, is that in reference to the Kylo Ren theme, I like the First Night of Ren theory as well, but another possibility is a theory that we were so convinced to be true at the beginning of the series and then just completely abandoned by the end, is that whether it be Osha and May or just characters here in general, is there is a dyad in the Force. As Kylo Ren and Rey were a dyad in the Force, maybe that is Osha and May, or maybe Osha and May are only one half. However it works, just because there was a specific verbiage used in this episode where, as Palpatine in The Rise of Skywalker is force lightninging Rey and Kylo and sucking up all their energy, he says, "The power of two will be mine." And they reference the power of two again here. Qimir says that's what he wants, the power of two. And then there's, of course, at the beginning with the witches, the power of one becomes the power of many. Maybe that's a possibility in there as well. Klein, theory time.
Just quickly on the dyad stuff, I wrote a big long thing over on the direct you can read right now about that power of two line and what it could mean. And in it, I say that if it is a dyad, I think something that they could be very cool for them to go down is it could be the twins. And the reason the Jedi were so upset with this Witchley tribe of people is that they created a dyad. They had figured out a way to unnaturally create a Force dyad. And so I think that could also be why the Sith are so interested in the twins, because that there could be a lot of power potential there. On the Sith themselves, if you go back and you look at the history of this planet, that this unknown planet that people are thinking it could be, back in Legends where that planet exists, huge cortosis deposits everywhere, and two people go there. Darth Tanabris and Darth Plagueis, a master and an apprentice. And ultimately, one of them ends up leaving, that being Darth Plagueis. What if Qimir is Plagueis and we haven't seen the last Sith in the show? And that's where we're leading. He's trying to recruit. There's always two. There's always two. There's always two. Never more, never less. And so maybe that's where this show is ultimately headed, towards him trying to take down this master. It could also make sense for the line of "I've been alive for a long time," even though he looks so young. What can Plagueis do? He can give and take life through the Force. Maybe this isn't the first body that Plagueis has existed in.
We also see him healing Osha.
Yeah, so I think like that could be very cool. Leading into the show, I kept saying Plagueis going to be there, Plagueis going to be there, and so I'm sticking to my guns. I think in some form that is the story they're trying to tell with Qimir himself. So it's exciting.
I think there's almost, I mean, this is just me, I think there's a higher likely chance that he's Tenebris.
I would love that. I would love that.
And he's trying to find someone to almost like replace Plagueis.
So then Osha is Plagueis.
No, Plagueis is still off.
Okay.
I think he's still kind of like Plagueis is still away. I don't think they really want to touch. I don't think they want to.
They
really
have to
touch
at some
Plagueis.
point.
Right now, they don't. Maybe they could tease it at the very end as like a season 2 tease, like you just said. But I think Tenebris would be a good swing and not the biggest swing for them to make the Qimir to be.
Regardless, there's only 2 episodes of the Acolyte left. And so there's a lot of mystery left to unfold with only 2 episodes. I am very hopeful we're going to get a season 2. Leslie Headland says that she already has plans to expand the mystery into a second season if they're planning to do it. So definitely something that I would be very excited about because I'm really enjoying the Acolyte so far. And if you are too, and you're watching these videos, make sure you hit the like button on YouTube, subscribe, hit the notification bell. If you're listening to us on the podcast feed, make sure you give a nice 5-star rating or leave a written review if it's on Apple Podcasts. Follow us on socials at Agents Fandom on TikTok and Twitter, Agents of Fandom everywhere else, so you don't miss out on lots of great content that we have coming. Recent interviews include stuff from Inside Out 2. I have some dropping right away for Descendants, Rise of Red. I always say the Red. As well as Agents of Fandom and TheDirect, a little collab here. Guy works at both. Richard Nemmons recently interviewed David Ramsey at Superhero Comic-Con as well, guy who plays John Diggle in CW's Arrow. And then we have recaps, reviews, features every day dropping for House of the Dragon, The Boys, The Acolyte, Dark Matter, My Adventures with Superman, The Bear, and even more. So make sure you stay tuned to that. Plus, we got not one, not two, but 3 different podcasts on the Agents of Fandom podcast feed right now. You can catch Council of Fire every Monday, where they're breaking down each and every episode of House of the Dragon. That's Fat Thor. That's Listen 3000. And of course, Damon has the Comic Corner pod alongside AF and Fat Thor. What do you got coming over there right now?
So yeah, we talk all the new comics all the time, whether it's the big 2, DC and Marvel, all the way down to your indie titles like Boom or Folk Comics, or even smaller actual independent publishing too. Right now, DC and Marvel are putting out their big summer events. Yay! Everyone loves a good comic event, and those two definitely do, because there's always one going on. DC just started Absolute Power this week, which is a huge event. Amanda Waller, essentially, she finally wins all the big superheroes. Batman, well, Batman doesn't have any powers, ironically, but Wonder Woman, Superman, everyone losing their powers, and Amanda Waller wins. On the Marvel side, Blood Hunt, MCU just can't get a Blade movie out to save their life, but hey, Marvel Comics is out here putting an entire Blade event throughout the past few months, and it's been pretty solid.
All right, I like it. And Klein, you got some stuff, exciting stuff going on as well. Where can the people find you on socials? Where can they find the Reckless Rebellion pod? And what's going on over at TheDirect? Because I hear there's some exciting new news.
Yeah, you can find me everywhere online. I'm at the Klein Felt, TheKleinFelt. And as you said, I host a Star Wars podcast each and every week with my good friends of the podcast here, Thomas Carter Rochester, David Thompson, and Jack Puce, called Reckless Rebellion. Look us up on podcast services around the world. I also host another podcast called Controller Club, a video game podcast. If you like that, if you like control sticks and booping and bopping on the TV screen, come say hello to us. We post new episodes every Sunday afternoon, Monday morning, and TheDirect. I write and edit there each and every day. They keep me employed. They pay the bills. I have some super exciting stuff happening over there right now. We just launched our very first newsletter on thedirect.com that I am heading up, the MCU Top 5. New newsletters drop every Saturday, breaking down the nittiest of gritty, the hardcore of hardcore Marvel Studios news items of the week. So if you consider yourself a fan of the MCU, Marvel Studios at all, come on over, hit subscribe. You can find it at thedirect.com/newsletter. Just subscribe with an email and it'll pop up in your inbox every Saturday morning, East Coast time. And it's been a lot of fun putting that together. I was kind of doing it in the shadows for the last 3 months, writing newsletters that were going out to no one just to figure out what we were going to do. And it's nice to actually have one out there, and got another one, I guess, coming this week. So it's going to go all summer long. We're just hitting our stride when it comes to Marvel Studios stuff this year, because we're coming into Deadpool and Wolverine. Coming out of that, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of exciting stuff. San Diego Comic-Con coming up, D23. So there's going to be lots of things to write about.
I'm subscribed. You should be too, just as you should subscribe to Reckless Rebellion, Controller Club, and of course, the Agents of Fandom podcast. Thank you so much for joining us today, everyone. We'll be back next week discussing episode 7 of The Acolyte. On behalf of myself, Damon, our wonderful guest, Klein, thanks so much for tuning in, everyone, and we will see you next week. Peace.